This is gonna be bumpy and bad. We are garbage. Just trash.
Boring.
How's everybody feeling about this? I can't imagine things getting much worse.
Would it be fair to say my greatest fears were realised with the new Section 31 TV movie? I really wanted to like it. I was ready to like it. I was thinking, okay, it's okay if it's a bit different. You've got to embrace the difference. Doesn't matter if it's featuring stuff that we haven't seen in Star Trek before. That's okay if it's a good story and acted well and it's well written and everything. It wasn't well written. The dialogue was hammy and cheesy and kind of pantomimey in places. The story reeked of being a complete mess. Like, you can so tell that this story started off as a TV series which was reworked into a movie, which was rejigged again and again and again and bounced around between different writers. Some of the dialogue I thought didn't work. It seemed very clunky. I so wanted to like this movie, I really did. And I was really willing to go into it with an open mind. I always thought that moments in Star Trek, like the shit show that was season 1 of Star Trek Discovery with those horrific Klingons and what they did to the franchise, they'd learned from these sorts of mistakes where you change too much stuff, it ceases to become Star Trek. If you mess around with the tried and true recipe, it's not going to work. Have not they learnt from these sorts of mistakes? Because in my opinion, Section 31 is the worst Star Trek in quite some time. It didn't seem to make sense in places. Established things in Star Trek were completely ignored. Some of the characters were just god-awful and irritating as all hell to listen to. I honestly do not know what they were thinking with this show. Michelle Yeoh is an Oscar-winning actress, but the material she had to work with. I really enjoyed the character of Emperor Giorgio in a lot of Discovery episodes. She was well written, she had some great lines. I felt like none of that shone through in this new TV movie. It seemed very rushed and so on the nose in places, from both a writing and a performance point of view. But let's take a look and break it down and let's go through some of the bits that we saw in this new Star Trek telly movie. For starters, obviously we get a new Star Trek logo at the start with the garbage scow as the main ship in this story. And the Star Trek logo flipped around backwards. Well, that's one thing they did get right, because this is not regular Star Trek. This is arse about backwards Star Trek that bears very little resemblance to the normal franchise. We get a quote about fate, and our story begins as a flashback in the Terran Empire where we see a young Giorgio returning from some kind of Squid Game-like challenge where a whole bunch of combatants have fought to the death and she's kind of like the last or second last person standing, where her and San, the character that we heard her mention in flashbacks in Discovery, were the last two surviving combatants, and they had one final test to perform to become Emperor, which was basically to kill your family, which Giorgio does, poisons her whole family, and San doesn't complete this ritual. The Terran Empire ship lands with troops of soldiers beaming down to the planet. We see that San has failed this test where Giorgio has succeeded. She's crowned Emperor. San kneels to her reign and she burns his face with a sword placed in the hot coals of a fire. And I thought, okay, this is a okay start. Like, this is a good little backstory and a good setup for Giorgio's character. Gives us a bit more information about what we haven't necessarily learnt in full detail about this character. So that definitely works to fleshing her out a little bit more. We then get a message from someone called Control. Now, I know originally Control started out as Section 31's threat assessment system, which relied on artificial intelligence, but this all went rogue and went very badly, and the AI that was Control ended up trying to take over the galaxy. And last that I recall, the Enterprise and the Discovery thwarted in Season 2 of Discovery? No, this is kind of like the leader of like a Mission Impossible sort of style force. So obviously they're sort of setting up Section 31 as more of a Mission Impossible kind of style, troop, where they kind of conduct these covert missions, and if anything happens, they're disavowed, kind of, space Mission Impossible. Which as a concept, look, isn't a bad one. I love Mission Impossible. I love that franchise. Highly entertaining. So the notion of a space Mission Impossible isn't a bad thing in any way, shape or form. But I thought that, the fact that they were naming the kind of the leader of Section 31 Control, when Control was the evil AI in Season 2, it's like, hang on, isn't there somebody in the writer's room which would flag this and say, hang on, no, we can't call it Control because we've had a Control, they're the baddies in season 2 of Discovery, we have to call something else. Who is letting this stuff through in the writer's room? We get a star date of 1292.4, which I guess places us somewhere between 2293 and 2364 in that lost era of Star Trek, in between Undiscovered Country and Encounter at Farpoint, where we're introduced to Giorgio's nightclub, which is outside of Federation space, called the Bystam. It's kind of like a Star Wars cantina or nightclub kind of space, and Giorgio has taken on the alias of Madame Vavanique de Franck. This is a kind of interesting alias, I guess. And she has a PA, which is one of these black and white aliens from the Let This Be Your Last Battlefield episode, which kind of strikes me as odd because in that episode of original series, the Charonians were established to be the last of their race.
All the people are dead.
All dead, Captain. They have annihilated each other, totally.
All dead?
Yes, Commissioner. All of them.
No one alive?
None at all, sir.
Why we have one operating as Giorgio's PA in this nightclub seems odd to me if this is meant to be set after Undiscovered Country. Another case of the writers in the writers' room not doing their homework properly. And it would seem that our Section 31 team is already assembled of their entire team at this nightclub, minus Philippa Giorgio. They have to recruit her for this mission. And look, the music in this whole setup and everything, it's okay. It definitely sounds more like sort of Space Mission Impossible than Star Trek, which, you know, is fine. I'm happy to go along with that. We get introduced to Alok Sahar. He has a proposition for Giorgio and offers her some kind of drug for some reason. Dulcet thistles, which are some sort of narcotic, it would seem, which she drinks. I'm not sure why these were needed. Anyway, she knows all about the Section 31 team and all of the agents in the bar. We get introduced to Quasi the Carmeloid, Mel the Delton, and we get established that Carmeloids apparently are immune to the charms of Deltons. We get introduced to the mech character of Zeph, who is played by Rob Kaczynski. Obviously has a bit of a Cockney British accent for this character. And we get a very strange character in the form of this hysterically laughing Vulcan, who is talking to Lieutenant Rachel Garrett. The music act that's playing in the nightclub here is singing this very kind of poppy song. There's this very weird tone in this, which is kind of nothing like what we've had in Star Trek before. It's sort of this weird mix of Mission Impossible kind of caper style music and pop songs, which strikes a very odd tone for Star Trek. We find out that Alok is part of this Section 31 team that's here to recruit or arrest Philippa Giorgio. They want her on this mission, and on the Section 31 ship, she meets the crew. It's a very weird tone in this scene on the ship. This Vulcan character, or what we find out, isn't actually a Vulcan character at all. He's acting a bit completely over the top with some awful accents and ridiculously cheesy. And we find out that this Vulcan character named Fuzz is not actually a Vulcan at all. They're actually a very small alien driving a full-size Vulcan robot, which reminds me a lot of the alien in Men in Black. There was a little tiny alien driving a full-size human robot in the Men in Black franchise. So this was what I immediately thought of in this particular show, but we've never had this kind of thing introduced in Star Trek before. Neither have we had introduced this notion of this race called the Nanokins, I think it is, of which Fuzz is a member of, and he's a tiny little alien that operates this giant Vulcan-sized robot and walks around in it. Keeps switching accents from Irish to other things. It's like, what am I looking at here? What garbage is this? I don't know whose idea this was, but this Vulcan character of Fuzz, the robot character, every time they were on screen, it was like nails down a blackboard for me. I just could not stand this character. It was horrific. It was the most obnoxious character I've ever seen in Star Trek. Also, a lot of the acting between the other members of the team is kind of really on the nose in this scene where we get to meet the cast. The acting is really hammy, and the dialogue is not great. It's very clunky dialogue. And we've got some really good actors in this show. Michelle Yeoh is an Oscar-winning actress, but the material she's got to work with is not good. And we soon find out the mission. They have to recover this guy called Dada No, whose name sounds more like something a small child would say to their father when asked to eat their vegetables, who is a bioweapons dealer. He's the target, and they have to basically, they do kind of like a Mission Impossible style briefing where they sort of have flash moments as to what they have to do to obtain this bioweapon from this character here. The music with this very poppy kind of techno-y tone doesn't suit Star Trek at all, and there's these really weird pantomime moments where Giorgio, on hearing the plan, sort of says meh, and then everybody says meh in unison. And it's like, oh my God, what am I watching here? This is the worst acting, the worst writing, such pantomime garbage. It's horrible. I had my head in my hands. This is absolute nonsense. But anyway, Giorgio has another plan. Dadano arrives at Giorgio's space station and is escorted by Giorgio. Once they get to his quarters, throws this phase pod onto the box which contains the bioweapon, which then puts the box and Giorgio out of phase with the rest of reality. Therefore, she's able to take the box from this character. Zeph and Alok arrive. Suddenly, a mysterious black suited figure arrives with a similar phase shifting device, and there's a big fight that ensues between Philippa Giorgio and this masked black figure. Now, this was in fact one of the sequences of this film which I did think was quite interesting, quite original. We haven't seen this kind of thing before, and it was quite entertaining. So I did think that, this is something a little bit different, something we haven't necessarily seen. So props to this sequence. The chase is on through the station. We've got Zeph smashing through walls. We've got them running through the quarters of naked Andorians and other aliens, crashing into the bar, and Mel gets into a fight with our black masked figure, and she's vaporized. We'd only just been introduced to this character, and already she's been killed. I thought we might have got more screen time from Mel, the Deltan, but she, barely lasted any time at all. We, hadn't even really got to know her in any capacity at all before she was vaporized. Giorgio continues fighting the mystery assailant on the stage of the bar in their various different stages of dropping in and out of phase. But in the course of the struggle, Giorgio gets stuck in the wall. She gets her foot jammed, half phased in and out of the wall. This was a little bit confusing to me because I wasn't really clear as to why her foot was getting stuck. She managed to phase through plenty of other walls and plenty of other things throughout the course of the fight sequence. So why her foot suddenly decided to get stuck at this particular moment was unclear as to why this error with the phase pod occurred. So I think that probably could have been explained a little better. The case is open to reveal the contents, which is some Terran Empire technology. The masked man takes the device, beams away, and Alok stuns Giorgio. We then get a flashback to the Terran Empire, and we see San presenting this device to Giorgio, and San going through this whole thing with Giorgio's, talking about how they were the last two combatants in this battle, and they had this kind of saying they would say to each other, two but one. They were together, but they were apart, and blah, 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 blah. And that as some kind of protest to Giorgio's emperor reign of terror, San takes this poison in a flashback to come as a bit of a protest that she had this weapon of mass destruction made. We get Alok interrogating Giorgio in a safe house, and we find out that Alok is from the 20th century. He is an exile from the eugenics wars. He was captured and augmented himself by some of Khan's crew. Again, is this necessary? Did we need this? I thought they slightly retconned the whole eugenics wars thing in Strange New Worlds to have shifted its time to the mid-21st century. I thought that had been changed in the timeline and wasn't from the 20th century. But again, why did we need Alok to be a augment from the 20th century eugenics wars? There was nothing really that he did in this entire movie that he couldn't have really done if he wasn't just an average human. He didn't use superhuman abilities in any capacity at all. I kind of almost feel like there's a few plot points in this show with Alok being an augment and Rachel Garrett being part of the crew, which didn't even come into play in the story. If you remove the plot point of Alok being an augment, nothing changes. He would go through the entire story and then nothing would change. He didn't do anything that would warrant him being an augment. He didn't show any massive superior intellect or show superhuman strength or anything in any capacity that he couldn't have done if he was otherwise than if he'd just been a human character. Same thing with Rachel Garrett. Rachel Garrett didn't do anything that would link her to what we saw of the Rachel Garrett in yesterday's Enterprise. She was just a Starfleet officer along for the ride. So you could make Alok a regular human and you could make Rachel Garrett Rachel Johnson. You know, just some generic Starfleet officer who's along for the ride. And nothing in this story would change. I kind of feel like those aspects of the story were literally just thrown into this story to try to convince Star Trek fans that they're watching Star Trek. Oh, we know this show doesn't seem much like Star Trek, so we better call this character Rachel Garrett, and we better call this guy an augment, just so the Star Trek fans know that they're watching Star Trek. Well, you're not fooling anybody. Anyway, we find out that this device that Giorgio had built back in the Terran Empire was called the Godsend, and it has the power to obliterate an entire quadrant. Data No is from the Terran Empire, and he brought it across to the Prime Universe. Oh my god, this Vulcan character in this scene is just doing my head in. Every time I hear this character open their mouth in this show, I just want to turn it off. One of the worst characters in Star Trek. Anyway, it seems like the Terran Empire has pillaged their universe dry, and they're looking to conquer and invade the Prime Universe. This didn't seem to kind of fit to me. Okay, if you've strip mined your entire universe dry in the Terran Empire and you want to come to the Prime Universe, then why would you want to blow it up with this weapon of mass destruction? That kind of didn't particularly track correctly to me, because they would obviously want the Alpha Quadrant resource rich and everything for them to exploit. So yeah, why blow it up? That kind of didn't really make that much sense. Suddenly the bridge of the ship explodes, the ship crashes to the surface, Data No burns to death, and we find out that one of the team is a mole and a partner with Data No. Some clunky moments here, getting this information across. And the team realizes they have to achieve two goals. They have to fix the antenna to send a message to Section 31, and also to acquire a new ship to get out of there. And we find out that there's a garbage scow that's been abandoned, and we have Quasi, Giorgio, and Fuzz trying to acquire this garbage scow, but the ship is going to need a coil to be able to get started. The inclusion of this garbage scow as the main ship for Section 31 just shows you how little these writers know their fans, because the ship is put on a pedestal. The Enterprise, the Voyager, the Defiant, the Discovery. These ships are heroes to many fans of Star Trek, and they're normally the namesake for each Star Trek series. So to make the team's ship in this show a basically bucket of bolts piece of shit, and not even a good bucket of bolts like, say, the Millennium Falcon was in Star Wars, doesn't do the show any favours. Giorgio reveals that there's no failsafe on the Godsend device that was built, so once it's activated they can't turn it off. And we have Garrett, Zeph, and Alok fixing the antenna, which also has a missing part they need to repair or find. However, once the ship got reactivated and they ended up taking off in the ship, they never sent a message to Section 31. This story thread never got concluded. Everyone just forgot about it. Suddenly Zeph goes missing, and there's a suspicion that Zeph is the mole. The crew then search for Zeph in the woods. These tricorders that they're using in this scene, we see Quasi with these tricorders. These are completely wrong. Like, if this story is meant to be set in between Undiscovered Country and Encounter at Farpoint, these tricorders look more like cell phones with, you know, the flashlight turned on. They don't look like period correct tricorders at all. I just don't understand who is in charge of this shit show where these kind of simple mistakes just slip through. I mean, it's bad enough that the story and everything is so clunky that, you know, you have to add insult to injury and make these terrible art department decisions as well. Anyway, soon we find out that Zeph is dead. We get this weird stuff going on with Fuzz reciting names. I mean, I know the character was an autopilot, but the names of his kids, Blip, Cliff, Brick, Polio, Influenza, Chaopox, Trip 2, Tonsillitis, Crimea, Congo, and Hemorrhagic Fever? Give me a fucking break. God, this character irked me so badly. And it would seem at this point that potentially Rachel Garrett is the suspect. There's been some evidence there that indicates that she might be the perpetrator of Zeph's death. But we soon work out that Zeph in fact killed himself, and it was Fuzz, the little teeny tiny alien that can fly in and out of the giant robot Vulcan body, and he infiltrated Zeph's suit and basically took control of it using Zeph's mech features to kill himself. The chase is on. We get a big speed tunnel fight thing there with speeding through tunnels. We've got Quasi jumping to save Alok in the midst of this big fight. Zeph gets thrown off. Giorgio ends up on the sled thing fighting Fuzz. Giorgio stabs Fuzz, and Fuzz gets beamed back to a mystery ship where we find out the big bad villain of this whole piece, which was the mystery man in in the black mask that we saw earlier, which was none other than San. San obviously has a massive revenge vendetta against Giorgio, and he wants to take this weapon of mass destruction, unleash it on the Alpha Quadrant, and get revenge on Giorgio for everything that she put him through back in the Terran Empire. Now, the whole premise of this Section 31 mission leads me to think one little thing. Why do we need Section 31 on this mission? The concept of a crazed madman with a weapon of mass destruction to destroy planets or galaxies or whatever isn't a concept that we have not had before that has been dealt with more effectively by Starfleet. Let me just go through a list of previous Star Trek villains and their agendas that have been quite well handled and dealt with by Starfleet. Nero and the Red Matter trying to destroy Vulcan in the original Star Trek movie. That threat was handled by Starfleet quite effectively. In Star Trek Nemesis, we had Shinzon and the Thalaron radiation looking to destroy Earth. That situation was handled by Starfleet and the Enterprise E. Khan in Star Trek II with the Genesis device, Lore and the crystalline entity looking to destroy planets, the Xindi planet-killing weapon, Tolian Sorin, and the rocket to destroy Viridian 3, Deckard and the Doomsday weapon in original series. So many stories in Star Trek have been crazed madmen hell-bent on revenge with weapons of mass destruction that have been handled more than effectively by Starfleet crews. So why the hell did this mission require a covert Section 31 ragtag team flying around the galaxy in a piece of shit garbage scow to handle it? Now, I know right at the start with the mission briefing, they name-dropped the Treaty of Catan, which was something that T'Pol mentioned back in Star Trek Enterprise, but there was no history of this treaty, what it involved, who it was about, and it just seems like some nameless treaty they're just throwing in there as some sort of get-out-of-jail-free card excuse as to why Section 31 has to solve this mission. If there was something that needed to be handled, that we need to break the Prime Directive on multiple occasions here, we need a covert team that can infiltrate an alien government to change policy, break the Prime Directive in order to achieve the mission. That's what you need Section 31 for. You need them to do stuff that is off the books, Starfleet can't take credit for. There was nothing in this story with San trying to destroy the Alpha Quadrant with a weapon of mass destruction to get back at Giorgio that seemed to be a mission that needed to be achieved by Section 31. This could have easily been achieved by a Starfleet crew with Giorgio on board as a consultant, which she did many times on Star Trek Discovery, acting in that capacity. I do not understand why you would need a Section 31 team to deal with this threat. Absolute nonsense. Shame on you, writers. So anyway, it turns out that Alok has been hiding the coil all along. They're now flying this garbage scow out of the planet, and we find out that San wants payback. He shoots on the garbage scow, which has no ability to defend itself whatsoever apart from hurling garbage, it would seem. The shields get down because they manage to drag his ship into the radiation field. Alok and Giorgio beam onto San's ship. Alok gets stabbed and Giorgio shoots Fuzz, but he manages to escape in a shuttle. We've then got Giorgio and San doing the obligatory fist fight thing with Alok and the robot Vulcan fighting while Fuzz is escaped in the shuttle. And how are we going to destroy a little Fuzz guy? We're going to find a piece of garbage in the garbage scow, which is an alien toy, and Garrett's going to use the batteries from an alien doll. Seriously. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The batteries from a friggin' doll are going to destroy this guy. Okay. Because, of course, this alien race that designs this doll uses these particular power cells that are very volatile, and they're banned from entering the Federation because their batteries, harm kiddies. So we can't let them into the Federation. Yeah, okay. And why does this alien doll, the alien toy with the bad batteries, why is it speaking English? If this is an alien race that they won't let into the Federation because they're bad battery policy, why is the doll speaking English? Even if this doll wasn't speaking English, why would the child's doll, when it was about to detonate, say, "We're all going to die"? Does this then mean the doll is in some way sentient and is aware of its surroundings and predicament? In which case, are they killing a sentient life form? And if not, and this comment is simply a pre-recorded message from the doll's manufacturer, why the doll would say this to frighten kiddies or whatever. Fuck me. This show, I swear, why are these simple storytelling devices not flagged in the writer's room? I mean, seriously. Anyway, they jettison the garbage. A lock kills the Vulcan robot. The toy explodes on Fuzz and his shuttle. San almost kills Giorgio, but she manages to kill him with a bit of a quick flick maneuver of the sword and manages to slash its throat. The passage seems to open and the device detonates in 60 seconds. Giorgio decides to destroy the Terran Empire and the device detonates, but to me it looked like the device detonated this side of the rift, like they're about to go through the rift. The ship doesn't pass quite through the rift and it goes off. It's like, well, wouldn't that destroy the Alpha Quadrant? To my eyes, it didn't look like the ship completely passed through the portal into the Terran Empire before it blew up. It kind of blew up on the Prime Universe side of the rift, which didn't make any sense to me either. A Quasi beams back a lock and Giorgio just in time before the device detonates and the passageway collapses. I don't know why they put the Star Trek fanfare in this moment in the show. The Star Trek fanfare by Alexander Courage belongs on Federation starships, in front of crews in moments of inspiration. It does not belong in the show at all in any capacity. We go to 3 weeks later on the Baram. We see Alok and Giorgio. Alok turns out to be Quasi. Apparently Garrett's been promoted to Lieutenant Commander. I'm sure Starfleet would be absolutely rapt to know their Lieutenant Commanders dressed like prostitutes. Again, the dialogue in this scene completely on the nose. Again, not good at all. And oh my God, I was so glad when the Vulcan robot got killed. I thought, oh, fantastic. This robot Vulcan, which was the most irritating character of the whole show, got killed. Thank God this character got killed. And then they bring this stupid character back again at the end of this show with a completely different, terrible accent as well. I was like, oh my God, like the least thing they could do is kill this bloke off and never have him return to Star Trek ever again. But it seems like Section 31 crew has a new job. We find out that their boss was Jamie Lee Curtis. Obviously, you know, Michelle Yeoh called in a favour from her Everywhere All at Once co-star Jamie Lee Curtis to make a guest appearance in the end of this episode. And what is the deal with the makeup artist on this show wanting to create friggin' cybernetic implants in every single bloody character? Does Jamie Lee Curtis need to have these mechanical implants? It just seems they were completely obsessed with putting little trinkets on people's faces. And we hear that there's a job on Turkana 4. Now, Turkana 4 was the planet that Tasha Yar grew up on, with the civil unrest and rape gangs and everything going on there, and the sort of horrific upbringing or whatever that Tasha Yar experienced being raised on that planet. We don't need to see Tasha Yar as a young girl being raised on Turkana 4 and being raped in caves and so forth. That's not something I don't think anybody has any desire to see. So why they would kind of allude to this at the end of the episode kind of struck me as a little bit odd. So yes, that was our Section 31 made-for-TV movie. I really wanted to like it, I really did, but what a mess it was. What an absolute mess. Even Oscar-winning actress Michelle Yeoh, who, yeah, as a character in Discovery as Giorgio, was great, had so many good witty, quippy lines and everything. One of my favourite characters when she was in Discovery, she didn't seem to have any of the snarky kind of, really good lines that she had in Discovery, and it just kind of seemed like all the actors were kind of going through the motions. The dialogue was on the nose. The story seemed to have kind of full of plot holes and everything. Not good Star Trek. I would even go as far as to say this is the worst Star Trek we've had in years. There's nothing about it to me that resembled Star Trek. I think if you were channel flicking, and this show happened to come on the TV, you wouldn't go, oh, there's Star Trek's on. You wouldn't. There's nothing about it that resembled Star Trek to me. As hit and miss as some of the Star Wars content has been recently, with sort of shows like Ahsoka and The Acolyte and Skeleton Crew and so forth. The second you turn it on, you're watching Star Wars. You turn on this show, there's absolutely nothing in it that goes, oh yeah, I'm watching Star Trek now. No, this is not Star Trek. But that's just me. Maybe you liked it more than I did. Or maybe you liked it about as much as I did. Guys, please leave a thought in the comment section and let me know what you thought of this Section 31 TV movie. As always, guys, if you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, please be sure to do so. Click on that big subscribe button to stay current and up to date with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. And also, please be sure to check out my merch in the merch store. Pretty cool, some cool t-shirts like this one, you can check out in the merch store. Pick yourself up a bargain and help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back pretty soon with my next video. Catch Catch you guys then.